all we're going to get. Hope everybody enjoys the book. Forgive me for mispronouncing Creole and also French words. Listening to other people talk about the Haitian Revolution, I noticed that I do take a lot of bad pronunciations of people's names and places. So I apologize for that. I think it has to do some with my dyslexia, that sometimes I see two letters and I'm like, how do I sound that out? My brain just goes, hits a wall and goes, how? So yeah, so forgive me for mispronunciations. All right, we got over that Toussaint wrote letters about not bringing black people back into slavery and stuff, and wrote out this letter basically telling his stance and what he is going to do and stuff. So now we're on chapter 9 of the impulsion of the British, the expulsion of the British. All right, here we go. Toussaint sent a white man, Colonel Vincent, an officer of engineers and a close friend, to the Directory to explain his action against Sonothax. Ragoud congratulated Toussaint on the expulsion of Sonothax, and Toussaint, in disputed command, prepared to sweep the British completely out of San Domingo. Pitt and Donnas for years hung grimly on their hope of getting the island. In November 1795, in an attempt most probably to win Ragoud, Donnas authorized Forbes to grant the same privileges to biracial people. They used the M word as to whites, but he still forbade the promise of freedom to black people, black troops. That would have been selling the horse to preserve the stable, but the attempt to win Ragoud failed. On February 18th, 1796, Dundas addressed the House of Commons. He was speaking in opposition to the motion of the abolition of slavery and the slave trade. In principle, Dundas agreed with the movers of the motion. This agreement in principle was routine, but continues. Dundas, quote, with those who argue on the general principle of slave trade as an expedient impolitic and incompatible with the justice of humanity of British Constitution, he had always and must still agree. He opposed it because he thought were it agreed by the House, it would endanger the peace of the country. Such resolutions, if passed into law in the present distracted state of the colonies, would throw them entirely into the power of the enemy. The foolish Barnave had not learnt to argue that slavery was maintained for the benefit of the slaves. Dundas went even further. Quote, the war in the West Caribbean, on the part of this country, was not a war for riches or local aggrandizement, but a war for security. But the drain of men and money was too great. By the end of 1796, after 3 years of war, the British had lost in the West Caribbean 80,000 soldiers, including 40,000 actually dead. The latter number exceeded the total losses of Wellington's army from death, discharges, desertion, and all causes from the beginning to the end of the Peninsular War. The cost in San Domingo alone had been 300,000 pounds in 1794, 800,000 pounds in 1795, and 2.6 million pounds in 1796. And in January 1797 alone, it was more than 70. I don't know if this is like 70 million. It's weird. Might be 70 million pounds. Who knows? Early in 1797, the British government decided to withdraw and maintain control only of Mole, M-O-L-E, St. Nicholas, and the island of Tortuga, Tortuga. Toussaint did not know this, however, and he and Ragoud close allies since the expulsion of Synothics, organized a final campaign. In January 1798, he was ready for the decisive attack on Mirabolas, while Beauvais, Ragoud, and Lamplum were to attack at different points in the south to prevent the concentration of the British forces. Toussaint wishing to win back the colony, those white and biracial proprietors who were living in territory controlled by the English, rigorously forbade all pillage and destruction by his own soldiers, and addressed to the traitors a series of proclamations promising them forgiveness and full rights as French citizens if they would be faithful to the Republic. Always a firm adherent of the rules of civilized warfare, he found it necessary to rebuke General John White for the barbarities of the troops under his command. Quote, oh, someone got blocked. Nice. I feel that though I am black, though I am not received as fine an education as you and the officers of His Britannic Majesty, I feel, I say, that such infamy on my part would reflect on my country and tarnish its glory. Combining military superiority with propaganda, Toussaint won 7 victories in 7 days. Maitland saw that the game was up and asked Toussaint for a truce. He would excavate the West Providence completely in return. He would evacuate the West Providence completely in return for the protection of the lives and property of the inhabitants under by the arrival of France of the deported Synothics. They never wished to restore slavery and had warmly approved of the steps Synothics had taken to educate the black laborers. But the Emeries, colonists, gave them no rest. And in July 1797, after the House had voted for the recall of Synothics, they appointed General Heduville, their special agent, Hedouville, an experienced soldier, had shown notable diplomatic gifts in his pacification of La Verdi, the most dangerous and persistent center of the counter-revolution in France. The advance, which preceded 18 Frutister, Frutidor, had lifted the directors from each occupying, and those events themselves had sent the most I'm gonna look up this word, everybody. I got 2 words to look up. No, this word. I'm gonna look up this word first. Oh, that's not it. There it is, right here. Right back, everybody. Gotta look up a word. It's obstreperist. So let's look up what obstreperist means. Is that it? I hope that's it. Obstreperist, someone or something that is uncomfortably noisy, ruly, and aggressively defiant of control. Interesting. Oops, I gotta go back. There, no, not that one. And it's this one. And it's this one. And it's, where's it at? Come on, where are you at? I'm gonna have to take another picture sometime. I'm running out of space. Okay, cool. There we go. Of the colonists in Ghana Had Sonothax arrived in France before Voublac and his friends had been deported, he would have been lucky to escape imprisonment. But once again, he reached home just after the fall of his enemies and met with a sympathetic reception. The directors themselves, however, were now thoroughly alarmed. Toussaint had disposed their representatives. There were charges and countercharges of plots for independence. Then came Toussaint's letter warning them that black people would fight to the death at any hint of restoring the old regime. Here was a new complication. It was now not so much the biracial people who were to be feared, but black people, their black army, and their black general. At once, the attitude of Ragoud changed. Hondouville was instructed to leave and to do all that he could to check Toussaint's power until France could send troops. He might have used Ragout against Toussaint. The Directory did not know, so I gave Hondouville a free hand to pardon or arrest Ragout as might seem suitable and possible to him. The Directory pretended willingly to accept Toussaint's deportation of Sonothax and maintain good relations with him. Yet, so doubtful was Hondouville of the reception he would get from Toussaint that he landed in San Domingo, the headquarters of Romeo, R-O-U-M-E, Romy. He arrived late in April, just in time to hear the further successes of the irresistible black person. Hondouville, I can't say his name, had gathered from all sources information about the men he was going to meet, and particularly about Toussaint, and nobody left him in any doubt about the kind of man Toussaint was. General, oh my gosh, here we go, we can try this one. Kerveresu, an able soldier, a strong and upright character, indicated to him the only possible line of policy. Quote, he is a man of great good sense, whose attachment to France cannot be doubted, whose religion guarantees morality, whose firmness equals his prudence, who enjoys the confidence of all colors, who has on his own an ascendancy which nothing can counterbalance. With him, you can do all. Without him, you can do nothing. It is important for us to remember two sentences in Kerveresu's tribute. First, Toussaint was devoted to France. Secondly, Toussaint in 1798, after 4 years had the confidence of whites, biracial people, and black people. He had set himself this aim despite all provocations. He had fought for it and had achieved complete success. What did Hondouville intend to do? Toussaint didn't know, but he ordered that Hondouville would be welcomed with every distinction. In his letters to the new agent, he was polite but reserved. Quote, permit me to make a observation to you as officer of the Republic. There are men who appear outwardly to love liberty for all, but who are inwardly its sworn enemies. What I say is true. I know it from experience. End quote. Toussaint was cold even in his reference to Romy, a sincere friend of black people, as a private correspondence shows. Quote, if the commissioner, Romy, esteems me, I reciprocate it in my esteem for him and respect his virtues. Toussaint trusted none of them. Get us some water here real quick. Oh my gosh, I got a flash goal. Thank you. I don't know. Anyways, but soon as he heard that Hondouville had arrived, he hesitated to let Ragout know. Though reassured that, oh my gosh, Chanet in Paris, Ragu did not exactly know what steps Hu Deville intended to take against him. He asked Toussaint to support against Hu Deville, sent him a confidential agent to discuss things he dared not write down. The black leader and biracial people were in complete solidarity. Continuing his negotiation with Maitland, Toussaint granted an amnesty to all the planters who had submitted to the British, and to all the laborers who had fought for British pay. The only person accepted were those planters who had actually fought in the British ranks, or those royalists who had come to San Domingo from elsewhere. It was a typical gesture by a man who all his life seemed quite untouched by the ordinary human passion of revenge, and never let anyone divert him from his aim, the restoration of San Domingo and the reconciliation of all the inhabitants, white, brown, and black. He submitted the terms of the amnesty to Hu Deville, who ratified them. Maitland tried to distinguish between Toussaint and Ragu. Toussaint would have none of it. Reminded Maitland that he was Ragu's superior officer, but he did not press Maitland hard. All he wanted was that he should leave San Domingo. All proposals and counter-proposals were sent to Hundeville for his approval, and on April 30th, the convention was signed, whereby the British entirely evacuated the West Providence. Soldiers, Emery's, Dissources, and some others, I don't know if this is a different word for victims. Let me look at this word. Vicomtes. I'm gonna look. Hold on a second. Vicoms, and we're going to look at what that word is. Vicoms. Here we go. Vicoms is a French noble title, equivalent to the British Viscount, rank between Baron and the Count. Interesting. So many words, I'll probably forget about it. Vicoms and Cavaliers broke the terms of the amnesty, destroyed cannons and ammunition dumps, killed all the animals, and set plantations on fire. Toussaint's Africans, on the other hand, starving and half naked, marched into the towns, and such was their discipline that no single act of violence or pillage was committed. So admirable was the conduct of his brothers, Paul L. Overture and his Law Overture and his troops at La Croix des Banquets, that a number of citizens of all colors wrote to Toussaint expressing their satisfaction at having such an officer in command of their district. They begged for a visit from Toussaint himself. The entry to Port Republican was a Roman triumph. The black laborers, so long made to understand that they were born to serve, came out to see the black army hailed as a savior of San Domingo, and the whites hastened to abuse themselves before him who they call their liberators. First came the clergy, with crosses and banners, and censers of burning incense, and then the erstwhile subject of his Britannic Majesty. In the middle of the road, a huge triumphal arch had been erected. The richest white woman, riding on horseback or in open carriage, escorted by a guard of honor composed of young white Creoles, came out to welcome the commander-in-chief. Young white girls threw over him flowers and garlands always a model of politeness. He descended from his horse and thanked them for their kindness. For the richest white planters of Cul-de-sac carried with pride a dais, and others of them bowed at his feet, begged him to ascend. Toussaint could see among them men who have been his most relentless enemies. The indignant and humiliated he refused. A dais and incense, he said, belonged only to God. That night the town was illuminated, and in all the great houses there was dancing, and 150 sat down to a banquet. The next day, the mayor presented an address praising Toussaint's work as, quote, a masterpiece of policy, wisdom, and humanity. Toussaint's reply was characteristics, quote, learn, citizens, to appreciate the glory of your new political status in requiring the rights that the Constitution accords to all Frenchmen. Do not forget the duties it imposes on you, but be virtuous, and you will be Frenchmen and good citizens. Work together for the prosperity of San Domingo by the restoration of agriculture, which alone can support a state and assure public well-being. Compared in this respect, the conduct of French government, which has not ceased to protect that with that of the English government, which has destroyed the appearance of your countryside, which I passed through on my way here, has filled me with grief. Its condition should have conceived you long ago that in joining the English you had embraced only a chimera. You thought you would gain, you have only lost. Quote, the liberty without license, which is the labor, will enjoy the reward which the law accords to his labor. What will attach him to the soil, and he cultivates. The age of fanaticism is over. The reign of law has succeeded to that of anarchy. Wise by experience, the Directory has just sent here a single agent whom it has chosen. The virtues which characterizes him assures us of happiness. Let us aid him in his important mission by absolute obedience, while he lays the foundation of the felicity. I'm going to make sure this is the right word. I'm saying this right real quick. Hold on a second. I'm saying it right. Felicity, which he meditates. I shall look over your safety, your tranquility, and your happiness, so long as you observe the solemn oaths you have made to remain faithful to France, for the country, and a personal gesture to Hendouville. Before Toussaint could reach Le Cap, the British, still eager to possess a portion at least of this wonderful island, suddenly opened a strong attack on Ragoud in the south. For the moment, Ragoud was in danger, and he appealed to Toussaint for help. Before Toussaint's reinforcements arrived, Maitland made an attempt to detach Ragoud from Toussaint. Ragoud replied that he would make war on him to the last extremity. Toussaint interviewed Houdeville in Le Camp, then hurried down to meet Ragoud at Port Republican, and the two men saw each other for the first time. Ragoud had long wanted to meet, quote, this virtuous man, treated Toussaint with the deference due in the commander-in-chief, and Toussaint, who always had perfect tact, addressed Ragoud as his old comrade. With the help of Toussaint's reinforcement, the British attack had been beaten off, and the two set off in Toussaint's carriage to meet Houdeville, and the tradition which was all the facts in its favor, is that they reached the camp, each agreeing to support the other against the intrigues by the agent of the Directory. Hey, pizza? Yeah. Yep, always do. What happened at this interview between, I'm horrible at names though, Houdeville and Ragoud. And Ragoud is one of the greatest tragedies of San Domingo. Houdeville overwhelmed Ragoud with attentions, promised that France would give him proof of high consideration, bewailed the enemies of the colony, told him the surest way to assuage them was to help him to achieve the secret instructions, the withdrawal of supreme power from Toussaint L'Ouverture. Ragoud seized the chance to put himself right with France and ruined himself, his caste, and his country for a generation. Between the French bourgeoisie and the black laborers, the biracial peoples, which they use the M word, from August 1791, wavered continuously. Biracial people instability lies not in their blood, but in their intermediate position in society. The pity was that Ragoud, dictator in the South, had not the sense to see that the French would use him against Toussaint, and then inevitably turn on him. It is said that San Domingo, that Toussaint, whose method were always oblique, had hidden himself where he could hear the interview between Ragoud and Houdeville. It was not necessary. During this very visit, Houdeville began to show a changed attitude to Toussaint. The captain of the boat, which had brought Houdeville, told Toussaint how pleased he would be to take him back to France in the same vessel. Quote, "Your ship is not big enough for a man like me," said Toussaint. Still another pressed him about his trip to France, how honored and welcome he would be. I shall go when this, and he touched his shrub in the garden, is big enough to take me, end quote. Toussaint was warning Houdeville and his friends that no liberties were to be taken with him. Full of diplomatic tricks himself, he affected to be extremely oppressed by the courtesies Maitland would show him. Over and over again, he said that the French would never have treated him in this distinguished way. This was not true, and he knew it. Lovax and Sonothax and the people of Port Republican had showered on him honors and dignities, but Toussaint wanted this to go to Houdeville. He even wrote to Houdeville about Maitland's honor, hoping that Houdeville had no objections to these courtesies being paid to an officer of the Republic, so that while doing his duty and paying every necessary attention to Houdeville, he let him know by direct and indirect means that he was not going to be trifled with. To demand in his turn the respect and consideration due to his rank. Houdeville conceded. A superior seemed unable to realize that he was dealing with a man who was in command of a victorious army, had a great mass of the people in two provinces behind him, and had nothing to learn from any Frenchman in subtlety and diplomatic finesse. He continued with his baiting of the uneducated old black person who spoke French so badly. Ragoud had deserted him to strike at him, but Toussaint continued with his self-imposed mission of driving the British out with the last damage to the colony. Maitland's forces were now concentrated in Mole, St. Nicholas, in the north, and at Germain in the south. Toussaint, while massing troops to take them by assault, if necessary, now brought off one of his most brilliant pieces of diplomatic negotiations. All the whites in the West Caribbean quaked at the bad example Toussaint and and black people were setting, viewed with dismay the ideal of Maitland coming into terms with black people, and none more so than the Earl of Balcarres, governor of Jamaica. All through the negotiation, he was petitioning Maitland not to evacuate Mole St. Nicholas, but Toussaint wanted to get Mole St. Nicholas without bloodshed, and he wanted a trade agreement with America, which he could get only if the British fleet allowed it. So while he negotiated, he sent messages after messages to the fictitious Balcarres, warning him that Jamaica was very near to San Domingo, and that he could easily send some black people across in canoes to burn down the plantations and start a revolt. Balcarres would naturally inform Maitland of this, and Maitland, the soldier, could appreciate these treats. Either the British must conquer Toussaint, or they must conciliate him. And Maitland knew that Toussaint would not be conquered. And I have to do an appeal. Got a restriction. Number 1 restriction, everybody. And see what happens. What's up, Rachel? He therefore informed Toussaint that he wanted to communicate with him on some important subject, quote unquote. Toussaint let him in no doubt as to what was wanted. Quote, I hope it is to announce the definitive evacuation of the points that the English still occupy in this portion of the Republic. It would be the only means of stopping or slowing down my march. While Germain is so strong, I promise you to upset its fortification. If it costs me 2,000 men, I shall take it, end quote. On the Maitland agreed to evacuate Germain, Toussaint secured from Houdeville authority to carry on these new negotiations and sent his representatives to the Maitland to treat at first for all the districts except Mole St. Nicholas. Moulin St. Nicholas. But Maitland now gave up hope of retaining even the fortress and offered to evacuate San Domingo completely. Toussaint accepted, keeping Houdeville scrupulously informed. Toussaint, though carefully polite like Maitland, was at his most masterful. Maitland proposed to him that as part of the price for evacuation, the fortifications should be dismantled. Toussaint refused and demanded them in the condition in which Maitland had found them. Quote, I flatter myself that you will adhere to this demand. If not, I shall be constrained to break off negotiations. Maitland agreed. But Maitland, after sending his envoy to Toussaint, sent another to Houdeville to make special arrangements, not for terms of evacuation, but the actual transfer of Mole St. Nicholas. Maitland may or may not have meant mischief. A few days afterwards, without the slightest trouble, a similar instruction was signed for the rendition of the fortress of Tiburon after the entry of Ragout's troops in Germany. Houdeville said afterwards that Maitland did this to excite the jealousy of Toussaint. If so, his own conduct was all the more open to question. He knew that Toussaint was carrying on negotiations for the evacuations of Mole with Maitland, but anxious to increase his own prestige, he sent a personal representative to the British commander of the fort and issued a proclamation granting the amnesty in Toussaint's manner. But the terms arranged were not satisfactory in Maitland. He repudiated them and informed Toussaint, who thus learned that Houdeville was carrying on negotiations with the enemy, commander-in-chief, behind his back. Toussaint, conscious that his own conduct had been faultless, attacked Houdeville without mercy. Quote, my frankness prevents me, citizen agent, from concealing that I have been sensibly affected by this lack of confidence, in direct contradiction of your authorization without regard to my position as commander-in-chief of the armies of San Domingo, without reflection, without even thinking it's necessary to inform me. You send junior officers to treat, and you give them powers which annul my own. It seems to me, however, that according to military hierarchies, it is I, as first chief of the army, who should have transmitted your orders to junior officers. I would have preferred that you had declared me openly. You thought me incapable of treating with the English. You would then have saved me from the disagreeable necessity of contracting written engagements and giving my word of honor. General Maitland is in asking to treat with me has understood the military hierarchy. If he addresses himself to me as commander-in-chief, I recognize in you the representative of the nation, for I have only treated after having demanded your approval. What have you done to merit this mistrust? He had Hundeville in a corner, and he did not spare him. But even then he did not want to breach, and concluded by saying that if only Hundeville would have confidence in him, together they could have saved the colony and make agriculture prosper. Hundeville boasted, and all the things he had done, and the army staffs on which he had worked, said that Toussaint could not teach him his duty. He did not know how dangerous a game he was playing. Had Toussaint been merely an ambitious chief of brigades, France would have lost the colony in August 1798, even while Hundeville was so thoughtlessly prodding at a man on whose army and influence everything depended. The British, having failed to conquer Toussaint by force of arms, made a supreme effort to get him by that species of lies and deception known as diplomacy. Maitland, a prejudiced Englishman, did not think Toussaint very intelligent, but Maitland had seen that black people in San Domingo, now that they had military experience, organization, and leaders, were a match for the European expedition. The French were certain to send an expedition to restore French authority, and the French army would bleed to death in the islands. Maitland therefore saw it was his business to make Toussaint as strong as possible in order that he might and more thoroughly defeat the French. He invited Toussaint to an interview, embraced him, paid him full military honors, reviewed the troops for him, and gave him magnificent gifts in the name of George III, and then proposed to him to make the island independent and rule it as king. He assured him of British protection. Quote, a strong squadron of British frigates would be always in his harbors or on his coast to protect them, end quote, and asked in return for exclusive trade with the island. The Americans also were building up a good trade with San Domingo. Maitland had sent an American envoy to Toussaint, and it was certain that they would come with the British. Sharp as was the divergence between him and Hundeville, Toussaint infused. It might be refused. I don't know. It says infused. He, like Ragoud, had enough power to sway his supporters to his will. France was powerless, and he would have got all the support and resources he needed from Britain. His refusal is the measure of the difference between himself and Ragoud. The British, he knew, would make an alliance, and then when he had broken with France, either come to terms at his expense with France or with their strong squadrons of frigates designed for Toussaint's protection, blockade the island, overthrow him, and restore slavery. Toussaint would have none of it. Maitland's letter show it is true that he realized, as so many of the French who knew the island realized, that black people in San Domingo were a power. The British were going to keep their bargain for the sake of British honor, but also because they could not do otherwise. But as soon as peace was declared, it would be a different story. This is not in any way speculative. Before the end of the year, Maitland actually wrote this to Dundas, who, to be quite sure, that the intent to add that the instant peace takes place, my whole view of this subject would at once be changed. It was not necessary, Dundas would understand. To avoid any shadow of misunderstanding, Maitland continued, quote, to diminish the French power and to stop the greater evil of the French Directory getting into its hands the means of Saint Domingo would afford them of annoying us. It may be well to submit to a smaller evil or, during the war, supporting the assured power of Toussaint, but on the restoration of peace and anything like a settled government in France, both with a view to restoration of the original colonial system, if that is practicable, and with a view to let France waste her means in men and money in this attempt. It was in the best tradition of the way in which the higher civilization uplifts the backwards people. But Toussaint merely expressed his regrets and declined with thanks. Such is history. But if that were all, it would be unreadable. Along with the material resistance of Maitland's debased concept of human life and the ashamed savagery of himself and his highly placed instructors, it is to be noted that elevated principles by which the ex-slaves guided his profoundly practical life. Toussaint was then, as always, devoted to French Republic. This devotion will in the end lead him to an untimely, cruel death. But it gave him a splendid life. To all black people, revolutionary France, which had decreed equality and the abolition of slavery, was a beacon among the nations. France was to them indeed the mother country. Toussaint, looking always to the development of black people as a people, did not want to break with France, its language and traditions and customs, to join the slave-holding British. He would be faithful to France as long as France was faithful to black people. But the war prevented France from sending supplies to the colony, and he arranged the secret convention with Maitland, whereby goods should come to certain select ports in British and American ships to be paid for by San Domingo produce. More he would not do. When Belcaris learned that Maitland was evacuating San Domingo completely, he wrote the home government protesting. The reply was a masterpiece. After dealing with great length the various advantages of the evacuation, it concluded with unanswerable resignation. There was nothing else to do. Both the battlefield and in the council chambers, Toussaint had outmaneuvered the British generals, as he had outmaneuvered the Spaniards, getting all that he requires at the least possible cost to him. This was the end of the ill-fated expedition of San Domingo. Quote, after long and careful thought and study, says Fortescue, quote, I have come to the conclusion that the West Caribbean campaigns, both to windward and to leeward, which were the essence of Pitt's military policy, cost England in army and navy little fewer than 100,000 men, about one half of them dead, the remainder permanently uplifted, unfitted for service, for the sake of a few barren islands still held by the British. England's soldiers and had been sacrificed, her treasure squandered, her influence in Europe weakened, her arm for 6 fateful years fettered and paralyzed. Fortescue does not seem to realize that Pitt and Dundas were playing for the finest colony in the world, and the rich market for the otherwise unprofitable slave trade. Fortescue blames everything and everybody, Pitt and Dundas, for incompetence, the climate, and the fever. The fever killed many more men than black people and biracial people did. But we have seen with that poor resources, with what poor resources and against what integral intrigues Toussaint fought. San Domingo was not the first place where European invaders had met fever. It was the decree of abolition, the bravery of black people, and the ability of their leaders that had done it. The great gestures of the French working people towards black slaves against their own white ruling class had helped to save their revolution for reactionary Europe, held by Toussaint and his raw levies, singing the Marseillaise, Marseca space IRA. Britain, the most powerful country in Europe, could not attack the revolution in France. Quote, the secret of England's impotence for the first 6 years of the war may be said to lie in the two fatal words, Saint Domingo. Houdeville, when all this, none would know it better than he. But for him, the expulsion of the British was merely another good reason why Toussaint should be got rid of at once. France wanted her authority restored in the colony. That was politics. And there is no gratitude in politics. But Toussaint was a black man and a former slave. And now that he had won back the colony for them, Houdeville and his staff not only intrigued against him, but grossly insulted him. Toussaint often wore a handkerchief tied around his head, and some of them boasted. Thank you, by the way, thank you. Appreciate that. And with 4 men, they could go into the camp of the old monkey with the handkerchief and capture him. Not only did Toussaint hear it, but it began gradually to be rumored among the black masses that the agent and his staff were hostile to Toussaint. And whoever was hostile to Toussaint was hostile to black people. And yet it is curious and characteristics of Toussaint that the most bitter subject of quarrel was the Emery whites, with Toussaint, the ex-slave, taking their side, and Houdeville, a former nobleman, attacking Toussaint for protecting them. Romy also recommended conciliation with the Emerys, but he advised the Directory to scrutinize carefully all the planters and allow only those who had rid themselves of their former prejudice to come back to the colony. Toussaint, however, invited back all who had taken the oath of fidelity. Perhaps in addition to their valuable knowledge and education, he felt that they would cease to intrigue and plot for the restoration of slavery only if they came back and found it possible to enjoy their property. He needed them now more than ever to counterbalance the power of biracial people. Some of these Emerys commanded black troops hired by the British had been excluded from their original amnesty, but Toussaint knew that San Domingo cultivation needed these black people, knew to that Midland was going to take black people straight to Jamaica, where they would find themselves enslaved. Midland was prepared to treat for them if their officers were also accepted, and Toussaint agreed. Houdeville accused him of protecting the enemies of the Republic. Toussaint referred to the amnesty authorized by him and special circumstances of these Emery's officers. Toussaint, a sincere Catholic, had pardoned some Emerys who swore fidelity after the church service. Houdeville accused him of breaking the Republican law, which forbade officials' associations with religion. The bickering being continuous, Toussaint resigned his post as commander-in-chief. What his feelings were can be judged from his letter to Hundeville, when the letter refused to pronounce on the resignation. This is, with perhaps one exception, the most astonishing of the voluminous and astonishing correspondence of this uneducated ex-slave who, until he was 45, 6 years before, had probably never received a letter, far less written one. Quote, there's no need for you to quote me your instructions to recall to me your worth and dignity. It is sufficient for me to know that you are sent by France to hold you in veneration. I respect too much the directory of which you are the agent, not to respect you in person, and covet your approbation. The proofs of competence with which the directory, oh my gosh, has honored me are so precarious, not to make me desire yours to the same degree. But it is because these sentiments are profoundly engraved in my heart. It is because your esteem and your confidence are infinitely precious to me, that justly are alarmed at the fear of losing them. I found it necessary to show you my despair. Faithful to my duty and my principles, I could only attribute the misfortunes which have befallen me to the perfidious maneuvers of intrigues against me, personal and again peace and order. If I have asked permission to retire, it is because, having honorably served my country, having snatched it from the hands of powerful enemies who fought for possession of it, having extinguished the fires of intestine war to which it was for long a prey, having too long forgotten in a cherished family to which I have become a stranger, having neglected my own interest, sacrificed my time and my years of the triumph of liberty. I wish now to save my old age from an insult which would shame my children. I would feel it more insomuch as I shall know that I have not deserved it, and I shall certainly not survive it. I do not conceal from you that, as you seem to be delaying indefinitely, to accede to my request, I shall make it to the directory itself. Men in general are so inclined to envy the glory of others, are so jealous of good which they have not themselves accomplished, that a man often makes himself enemies by the simple fact that he has rendered great service. The French Revolution has furnished many examples of this terrible truth. Many great men have expiated and exiled, or on the scaffold, the services that they have rendered in their country. It would be imprudent for me to remain any longer exposed to the shafts of calamity and malevolence. I'm gonna say this word real quick. Let me look at this word. Hey, Kevin. It's calumny. Hold on a second. There we go. Hey, Mr. Carrot. And, Mr. Carrot Cake, sorry. And malevolence. Quote, an honorable and peaceable retreat in the bosom of my family is my solemn ambition. There, as at the head of my armies, I shall always be ready to show a good example and give the best advice. But I have learnt too much of the heart of man, not to be certain that it is only in the bosom of my family that I shall find happiness. End quote. These words surely came from the heart. LeBlanc and the others being in Guyana, had no immediate fear of slavery. He saw that Hundeville might dismiss him, to resist would have meant civil war against Ragoud also. My conduct for some time, and above all since your interview with General Ragoud, has been a continual infraction of the law. And rather than face the civil war purely for his personal position, he preferred to go. Houdeville had been rubbing in to him that though commander-in-chief, he was subordinate to the agent. Quote, I know your powers, wrote Toussaint. Quote, that is why I address my resignation to you. And if I had not known them, you would have taught them to me by ceaselessly reminding me that you can dismiss me, which makes me think you very much want to do so, end quote. It was no bluff. He sent a secretary to the directory to arrange the terms of his retirement. The English were not yet 6 months out of San Domingo. Toussaint was drinking the cup of dredge. But even then, as the letter shows, he was not thinking in any way of independence of the colony. He would retire. If any attempt were ever made on liberty for all, he would be there. It was the San Domingo masses that saved him. Houdeville was making arrangements with the directory to supersede him and the black generals, and to put 3 white generals in their place. But he dared not to do it. So great was the unrest in the country and in the army. Houdeville tried to introduce a system of apprenticeship to the laborers, to the owners for a period of 6 to 9 years. A unintelligent which the British were to repeat with their resounding ill success after an emancipation of the slaves in their own colonies in 1833. Black people might have been taken that from Toussaint or Sinothax, not from Houdeville. The army had not been paid, despite Toussaint's urgent plea, and it resented its neglect and the attacks on its general. Fears of black liberty began to grow. Houdeville claimed that Toussaint and the generals were spreading calamities against him among the laborers. He wanted them, like good French citizens, to sit quietly, while now that he had no use for them, he arranged for their dismissal and once more put black men where they belong. Ew. The unrest increased. Houdeville began to realize that he would find himself without Toussaint. He asked Toussaint to address the circular to the commandants and the districts to quiet black people and turn them from their alleged intentions to rise the massacre of whites. Toussaint repudiated this aspiration on the character of the laborers. While he addressed the required circular, he disassociated himself from the idea that black people were only awaiting an opportunity to massacre the whites. Houdeville now tried to recover lost grounds with Toussaint. He made overtures through friends. Toussaint replied in kind, but held himself stiffly aloof. Houdeville wanted to restore the civil authority as their controlling force, and was naturally in immediate conflict with Toussaint's generals. Toussaint had disbanded some of the troops. They had gone back to work willingly, but Houdeville was disbanding black troops and confiding the care of the coast only to white troops. Black people looked at this with intense suspicion. Houdeville was not Levax or Sinothax. Black people did not care for anything he had done in La Verde. He addressed a sharp reprimand to Mosey unjustly. Mosey replied as sharply. The country was in the state of tension when any incident could cause an insurrection. Toussaint would not go to Le Cap. He told Houdeville that he had been informed that his life was not safe there. Houdeville asked him to go to Fort Liberté, where Mosey was stationed, to quiet unrest. Toussaint found an excuse to delay. If Houdeville wanted to govern, Well, let him govern. Suddenly the private quarrel broke out among the garrison of Fort Liberty. While Mosey, the commander, was away, representatives of the laborers, got into conflict with the municipality, consisting chiefly of biracial peoples and the old free black people. A word from Toussaint would have restored order. Instead, Houdyville sent another black person. I don't know. Let me look up this word real quick before I say it. All right. It's a name. Okay, good. It's Manganat. Maganat, I think, with authority to depose Mosey and assume command. Certainly in law, Houdyville had every right to dismiss Mosey. But not only was the action unjustified, it was unintelligent. For Mosey was after Toussaint, and the most popular man in the army, and was also Toussaint's nephew. Mosey returned to the fort, found Manganat proclaiming his new commission. You cannot make war as I can, citizen Manganat. He told him, take care. But Maganat, with Houdyville's commission, insisted on his rights. A National Guard and the detachment of European troops opened fire. One of Mosey's brothers was killed. The other was captured, and Mosey had to ride for his life. As soon as Houdyville heard of this, he dismissed Mosey from the service and ordered that he should be captured, dead or alive. When Toussaint heard that Houdyville had dismissed Mosey, he gave Dicelences orders to march on Le Cap and arrest Houdyville. Toussaint had given the agent ample rope, and Houdyville had hanged himself. At first he maintained a bold front, but Mosey raised the black laborers in the plain, and as Houdyville felt a noose tighten around his neck, he sent Colonel Vincent, a priest, to Toussaint, seeking to patch up the quarrel. But Toussaint's mind was now made up, and he acted with his usual rapidity and decision. Intimate as he was with Vincent, he arrested and imprisoned him. He ordered the detachment to intercept 3 of Houdyville's officers, who served under Ragoud and were bringing letters. They attempted resistance and were killed. Toussaint then marched on Le Cap. Houdyville was not waiting for him. Already, Dacilien's troops were pushing into the outskirts of the town. Houdyville issued proclamation denouncing Toussaint as a traitor and fled on board a boat in the harbor. Toussaint arrived in Le Cap, inviting Houdyville to come ashore, but Houdyville declined and left for France with about 1,000 fractionaries, whites, biracial people, and former free black people who detested Toussaint and his ex-slave generals. The municipalities and the citizens hastened to welcome Toussaint and thanked him for restoring order. The Rubicon had been crossed, and next day, in the public speech at Fort Liberty, Toussaint boldly asserted his own authority. Quote, at the very moment when I have chased the English from the colony, Houdyville chooses a black person to destroy the brave General Mosey and the 5th Regiment, who have so much contributed to the evacuation of our enemies from the colony. It is they whom you wish to kill. And when you kill them, you Do you not know that there are thousands of brave black people behind you who would have taken vengeance for the brave General Mosey and the 5th Regiment? Don't you see that you expose all these unhappy Europeans and our wives and children to massacre? What would France say? I reinstate Mosey in his former function, who reverted to the sword, who diverted to the sword, will perish by the sword. Hundeville says that I am against liberty, that I want to surrender to the English, that I wish to make myself independent. Who ought to love liberty more? Toussaint Louverture, slave of Breda, or General Hundeville, former Marquis and Chevalier of St. Louis? If I wished to surrender to the English, would I have chased them away? Remember that there is only one Toussaint Louverture in San Domingo, and that at his name everybody must tremble. This was the new Toussaint. He had no wish to break with France, but Hundeville's France representatives had been a source of nothing but unrest and disorder. Henceforth, he would govern. That night, he dined with Mosey, and in a long monologue, he expressed himself fully. It is one of the few occasions in which he gets a glimpse into his mind. Hundeville has spread it that he is going to France to seek forces to come back. I do not want to fight with France. I have saved this country for her up to the present. But if she comes to attack me, I shall defend myself. General Hundeville does not know that at Jamaica, there are in the mountains black people who have forced the English to make retreats with them. Well, I am black like them. I know how to make war, and besides, I have advantages that they didn't have, for I can count on assistance and protection. Toussaint clearly meant British, but although he knew that the English would leap at the chance to ally themselves with him, he would only form an alliance if the French attacked him. Finally, he told Mosey and the others, I have done what I ought to do. I have nothing to reproach myself with. I laugh at whatever Hundeville says, and he can come when he wants to. There is the same note of personal responsibility as when Senothax was embarked. He worked alone, making his decisions without advice or assistance of anyone, and his officers, soldiers, and laborers followed him blindly. Where was he heading for? He did not know. His powerful mind, unaided by precedent or education, was slowly working out a satisfactory relationship with France, whereby the connection would be maintained with benefits to both, and yet he would govern as long as all these commissioners, agents, and others could not govern. He would find it before long. But meanwhile, he sent Vincent and Romain to Santo Domingo, asked him to assume the position vacated by Hundeville until instructions came from Paris. But Romain was already commissioner. When Hundeville left France, the Directory was so uncertain of his reception and his future fate that a member of his staff was entrusted with the seal packet to be opened only in case of his death or enforced absence from the island. When it was opened, it contained Ramon's appointment. Ramon was therefore installed as Hundeville's successor. The faithful Vincent, who thoroughly approved of Hundeville's expulsion, was sent to Paris to present Toussaint's dispatches and explanations. In his report, Toussaint accused Hundeville of serving the interests of the party which he had defeated on the 18th Fructidor. Over and over again, he referred to this coup d'etat. The machination of Vaublanc and the Emeries haunted him, and the black laborers of San Domingo. Hundeville naturally reached Paris before Vincent. From him, the Directory learned that the colony was practically lost to France, and that there was only one chance to save it. Quote, the export of sugar and coffee by English and American boats will make money flow in the colony, and he, Toussaint, will not fail to attribute this state of things to the wisdom of his government. I am no less convinced that sooner or later his precarious island, this precious island, will escape from France, from French domination. I do not take it on myself to propose the measure you will take to weaken the power of those who dominate it. But if the moment is not yet ripe for taking vigorous measures, it will perhaps appear to you important to create germs of division between them, to embitter the hate which exists between the biracial people and black people, and to oppose Ragouts and Toussaint. I do not see my way to guarantee the purity of the intentions of the first, but in justice to him, I can assure you that I have only praise for his conduct. You will have proof in his correspondence. If I had been able to count entirely on him, I would not have hesitated to go to the south in spite of the uncertainty of sailing there without being interrupted by the English. End quote. Although race feeling remained, there was no hostility between Toussaint and Ragout. Houndeville's own words shows that he deliberately created it, and even then was not assured of Ragout. Before he laid the plan in front of the Directory, he had acted, and he had written a letter to Ragout, absolving him from all obedience to Toussaint, and authorizing him to take possession of the districts of Léogène and Jacmel, incorporate the South by a previous decree not yet carried into effect, that he hoped would start the conflagration and keep it going until France was ready. Houndeville and his superiors belonged to the same breed of Maitland and his. Uninhabited, they wallowed with vest in the filth and mire of their political conceptions and the needs among the very leaders of their society, but nevertheless the very dreads of human civilization and moral standards. The historians who finds excuses for such conduct by references to the supposed spirit of the times, or by omission, or by silence, show thereby his account of events is not to be trusted. Houndeville, after all, was a product of the great French Revolution. Voltaire and Rousseau were household words and died before the revolution began. Jefferson, Cobbett, Thomas Paine, Clarkson, and Wilberforce had already raised banners and were living lives which to Maitland and his kind made them into subversive enemies of society. They had their reasons, so have their counterparts of today. They fill our newspapers and our radios. The type is always with us, and so are their defenders. All right, I think we're gonna stop there. It's a good stopping point. Chapter 10 is Toussaint seizes the power. So we see that Toussaint is been kicking out people, and hopefully he stops having his devotion to France, because France keeps sending these people to take away his leadership and the things that he made. You know, who's in the comments? Oh, I'll accept you. Hey, Finn. Oh, it might be bad, Joe. But now we're going to look at Toussaint seizing power. Hey. So Toussaint was almost deceived, but too intelligent to be deceived. You know what I mean? And this is very important, because a lot of these things, like black generals during this time, putting into positions of power to be seen to look up to, is a rare thing in these times. Because black people were not seen as people, they were seen as as commodities. They were seen as imperialist commodities to be able to transport and to like sell to people, and then in turn have free like labor. So like black people were seen as subhuman. So like seeing them in positions of power, of leadership, and actually making revolution really shows that, you know, black excellence is always put to subjugation, because it really what it does is it really challenges whiteness. That whiteness is not the superior position. Go ahead, Finn. What's up?
Oh, nothing. I just came in to help you. And
I'm closing it right now because I don't want to go into another chapter. It's a very good stopping point. It's Toussaint seizes power. Toussaint seizes power. So we're heading into another transformation. The first transformation was getting the English out of San Domingo, and also getting rid of the what is it going to call? What am I trying to get? I can't think of the word. The conspiracy to make Toussaint no more the leader, you know? And yeah, but there are some black people that left with that person and stuff like that. But now he said that like he still wants to represent the French Republic, but he said that no lag, the whole reading lag now. I'm sorry. That like I forgot where I was going. That if the French want to come and take the land and put them back into slavery, that Toussaint will fight and defend San Domingo. I hope that soon we come into a conclusion that Toussaint says fuck the French, and you know, because it says Toussaint seizes power. So we'll see what that says. So yeah, it's pretty cool. This is I think the French, the reason why the Haitian Revolution gets put on the sidebar a lot and not really like looked upon by like communists and Marxists is because they think it I don't know. I just think that this is important to read because it shows black empowerment. You know what I mean? It shows them black empowerment. So I don't know. Good. All right. That's all. I'm just yapping.
No, you're not. By the way, thank you. I mean, if it turns out that Toussaint ends up defending Santo Domingo from the French, I mean, that also puts that also destroys the whole anti-black racism that exists in modern day Dominican republics. So
I wonder if we're gonna find out how that island got like split up. You know what I mean?
And thank you so much for bringing that up. That's why I'm so bummed out that I'm not able to like read along with you this book, because I was also wondering that how did this island get split up between Haiti and Dominican Republic? Yeah.
I hope we get into that to find out why. But like, I guess it was before it was Haiti or Dominican Republic, it was called San Domingo, I'm guessing. And then it got split up between Haiti and, that's what I'm assuming, and Dominican Republic. Because was it San Domingo, the whole island of what is now Haiti and Dominican Republic?
I actually wouldn't be able to tell you, because this is the other reason I really like this book, is because it goes over that history. I know that Santo Domingo nowadays is a city in Dominican Republic, but yeah, let's look at it.
I'm going to look at it right now. San Domingo, name before Haiti? Can't spell it though. Domingo. How do you spell Domingo? Was it D?
D-O.
Oh yeah.
M-I-N-G-O.
Got it. Hispaniola. Yes, San Domingo, Hispaniola. So that was Hispaniola. It says Santo Domingo is the capital of the Dominican Republic. You were right. But that was before the Dominican Republic was anything yet. Because right now it says Hispaniola. Whoa, Dominican Republic got more than Haiti. What the fuck?
Yeah, I know.
Damn,
That's where.
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say. Now you're understanding where all this. It really explains a lot of modern day issues between, in the society of that island, which is between Dominicans and Haitians.
Yeah. And the people that put them in contention are white settlers.
Yes. Yeah. And
then whole thing. It's that same thing of doing that stigmatization of like Asian people, right? Because Asian people used to have businesses in black neighborhoods, and like the settlers would put the black people and Asian people against each other. See, look, they're taking over your place, like shit like that. And like,
yeah, exactly. Utilizing racism as a way to prevent any kind of class collaboration, not class collaboration. In order for the working class, solidarity between the working class, and once the working class unites, there's no other way but to point the finger at the ruling class. Yeah.
So it's like, and then they put like Asian people, Pacific Islanders, and brown people at top of black people too. Causes more interracial division and strife that is created by the white man.
Yep. Well, I mean, they did it with us Syrians as well. That whole thing of the Arab Spring is like, ooh, the Shias are taking over. The Sunnis must rise up. Ooh, careful with the Druze and the Alawites. The Alawites are taking over.
Yeah. That's why I'm sorry, but I'm very anti-religious, because based on historical context, every single religion has been utilized to subjugate and empower others. It's based in it's like they commodify people's like spirituality, Like I get spirituality. I mean, I'm still in the scientific brain where I'm like, well, prove there's a spirit. You know what I mean? I'm a scientific brain. I'm not very good at science, but I'm a scientific brain. Like the concept of God is so abstract to me that I'm like, why would I believe in something that has never presented itself in real life, and you cannot measure, nor could you explore if this person exists? Do you know what I mean? Things like that.
I do, because I'm not saying it because you're saying it, but I also have the same scientific driven mind that you do. Mm-hmm. I'm very driven by the material and tangible world. Yeah. And by that, I don't mean things I can only see, because I know that there are tangible things that I cannot see, but they can at least be measured or viewed through some sort of,
Well, like even the theory of like black holes where like there's also the theory of mathematics, right? Mathematics is a theory. It's a science, and it can determine like they use mathematics to discover that black holes exist. And then they went out and tried to find a picture of a black hole, and they did. But it happened through mathematics. And then there was a whole thing is like, where does information go? When the event horizon, does it destroy all information? And through Hawking radiation, they're finding out another thing. But through mathematics, theoretical mathematics is based on the objective reality, and it presents things that are existing in the world through mathematics. So like there's always those things, you know what I mean? But to bring it all together is where you have to see the observable part. That brings all that together to prove the theory correct.
Exactly. The tangible must persist and stay present and be present in order for it to work. So,
well, if you have theory, you must put it to practice to see its motions, its movements, its liveliness, to see if it is either not going to work or going to work according to the conditions. Does it bring progressive conditions to people, or does it regress people? You know what I mean? But you're not going to know unless you see it in living motion. You know what I mean? That's why practice is important. So
yeah, it's like I really like the concept of staying away from speculation.
Yeah. Well, I thank you for coming up. Thank you for coming up, Finn. Tomorrow I will do it at the same time if you're available. I think Lind and Joe are visiting Conrad right now, so they're going to be busy for a little while. They'll still do the recording, but they'll be pretty busy. Joe might come up sometimes. We'll find out. We'll see.
Okay, yeah, that's awesome. Nice to see you, Lind, and Joe, and Yusuf as well.
Yusuf, if you go check out Yusuf's page, they did a video on certain communist leaders. It's pretty cool. So.
Oh yeah, I'll go check that out then.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna close it down for tonight, though.
Sounds good. Have a good one.
All right, everybody. Thank you, Finn. Thank you, everybody. Like I said, if you ever have questions, please let me know, and I can try to answer them or find the answers. All right. Thanks, everybody. Good night.